Marcus Hayes does a great job covering Philadelphia sports, great writer for Philly.com. He's actually enjoying the nice weather in Augusta with the Masters, but he's kind enough to join us for a couple moments. Marcus, good to catch up, my friend. How you been?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate a couple moments. And again, let's get right into it, Marcus. When you look at what's going on here with the Philadelphia 76ers, Sam Hinkie, you wrote a real interesting piece today that he flat out just quit on the Philadelphia 76ers. I want to get your thoughts, though. When this came down, did this shock you more of the fact that Hinkie turned around and quit, or do you feel as though Hinkie had no other choice and he was pushed out?
No, he had every choice. I mean, they've given no indication that they want to lose him as an asset, to use his term, without himself. I mean, the fact that he has less power now is no more real than it was in December when they hired Jerry Colangelo. I think he was delusional from December until now in thinking that Jerry Colangelo was going to let him make big decisions autonomously or even have a major voice, whether or not Jerry hired Brian Colangelo to run the team or not. It was either going to be Jerry or Brian, but it wasn't going to be Sam, because Sam has proven inept in making those sorts of decisions. I mean, and we're not just talking about the 3 or 4 first-round picks. We're talking about trading Michael Carter-Williams and not replacing him for 2 years. We're talking about, some of the other sort of mismanagement of the personnel and the roster, where you create this toxic atmosphere not only of losing, but a roster devoid of leadership. Those things were incredibly derelict in his duty, so he cannot be trusted to make those sorts of decisions going forward. However, he's a valuable asset. He's on the cutting edge of analytics, sports science. He's exactly what the Sixers need to go forward and build. And I don't think they had any inkling, any intention of firing him, at least, within the next calendar year. Both Brian and Jerry need help in those arenas.
Again, it's an early edition of the warm-up. We're here a couple minutes past the 1 o'clock hour. Rich Quinones here. Marcus Hayes joining us, talking a little Sixers. You brought up a good point as far as Hinkie being the master of analytics, and there's some areas within the organization that they lack, some areas that they certainly need help. If that's the case, and he came on board several years ago with this, quote, process, this innovation to tank, to gather assets, draft picks, and then build after 2, 3, 4 years, you would think then, even if they were going to slide him down the room or the hallway, so to speak, he would want to see the fruits of his labor, bear the fruits of his labor. So, I found the letter to be long-winded. I looked at it as borderline arrogant. He is a smart guy, but why do you think this is a situation where he just could not play nice and just realized, you know what, I'm not going to go along with this. It was my plan. I've dealt with this. I've done all the legwork, so to speak, even though we have a bad product. But I certainly believe in this. But I'm not going to have other guys come in, push me down the hallway, and then reap the rewards of this 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
I will say this. Without the manifesto, this is a little bit more noble and sort of self-martyring moment. With the manifesto, what he's essentially saying is, I am equal to Elon Musk and Warren Buffett. I'm a great thinker. You don't appreciate me. You can't appreciate me. You don't deserve me. And even if I don't work again in the NBA, I won't be working with idiots like you. And to me, that's beyond arrogant. What that says is, even though I made all these mistakes, even though I've made all these errors, what I have done on the positive side of the ledger is clearly enough to keep me in my job. There's no need for Jerry Colangelo. There certainly is no need for Brian Colangelo. And this is the kind of thinker that I am, and you're not. I mean, if they'd hired Elon Musk to come in or Warren Buffett to come in or somebody, that he considers to be his intellectual equal, perhaps they're talking about something else. But, he sees nepotism and he sees establishment, and he says, you know what, I'm not going to deal with that, even though a combination of the old and the new might work best for everyone.
10 after 1 on a Friday edition of the warm-up right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Rich Quinones here. We'll take you up to 2. Marcus Hayes does a great job covering Philly sports. Philly.com, good article on Sam Hinkie quitting on the 76ers going forward. You know, I look at a guy in Josh Harris. I'm a little surprised. Where's he been in all this? And I also want to I said this yesterday on the air, Marcus, and I want to make sure I'm accurate on this. You covered the draft when they drafted Jahlil Okafor, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. I've read something, so again, please clarify if I'm wrong. And if I'm right, I want to get your thoughts on this. With the whole fiasco with the jersey or the dropping of the jersey or the throwing the jersey or the misplacing the jersey or just sliding under the table, I've read somewhere and heard somewhere that you wanted to get a quote from either Hinkie or Harris, and one of them said, now's not the time after that incident. Can you clarify that?
You mean when are you talking about the draft or the fighting incident?
Well, actually, I heard the draft, but if you have something on a fighting incident, go ahead. That's why I wanted to clarify it. I would assume it's the fighting incident.
Right, at the draft.
Thank you.
I mean, Hinkie and Harris weren't at the draft. Hinkie was back in Philadelphia, so I didn't seek any comment from Hinkie. Okafor was clearly displeased that he didn't go first or second, and that he had to go to Philadelphia. So that sort of soured that relationship from the start. He wasn't happy, as in Porzingis' agent wouldn't even allow Hinkie to touch to interview his client. So at that point, you have to understand, Hinkie has become a liability. Number one. Number two, the day that Okafor was suspended after the second fight video had come out, he had 2 fights in one night, 2 videos came out. Hinkie walked past Brett Brown, who was addressing the issue in the moment, went into the locker room. This is at Madison Square Garden. Went into the locker room, came out of the locker room. And I walked over to him and I said, hey, can I talk to you about this incident? And he says, not right now. And at that point, I was like, you know what? That is incredibly derelict in your duty. You are the person who's responsible for getting him here. You're the person responsible for the suspension, not Brett Brown. Brett Brown's responsible for teaching him how to play basketball and making sure he makes curfew if there is one. You're responsible for the big picture, and you're not doing your job. And I am totally convinced that after that incident, the way he mishandled that incident, and the fact that the locker room was totally devoid of any sort of veteran leadership.
Agree.
That's why Jerry Colangelo was brought in. And it happened in New York City and Boston.
Sure.
And it was incredibly embarrassing because that's where Josh Harris does his business.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. Marcus Hayes joining us for a couple moments. Rich Quinones here. 47 and 195, and then he decides to resign. Does Sam Hinkie? I guess if there's one person I would think to be a little aggravated or ticked off would kind of be the good soldier and Brett Brown. Now, kind of two thoughts, 2 questions on this one, and this is one of them is my opinion. First of all, you look at a guy in Brett Brown who's endured this, and this is a team that basically you got to play the hand that you've been dealt. He's tried to coach them up. You're right. They were devoid, and to some regard, devoid of veteran leadership to take some of these young guys under their wing. When you look at the move yesterday with Hinkie resigning and the whole Colangelo situation, do you see a situation after the season ends, regardless of the fact that they gave Brown the extension, that they would fire Brett Brown, or Brett Brown would say, you know what, enough of this mess? Or is Brett Brown like, are you kidding me? This guy resigns and I'm stuck cleaning this up. I got to coach these guys, and this is the guy that's responsible for this.
Well, to answer your question briefly, yes, Brett Brown is exactly thinking that right now. Bob Cooney wrote a really good column about Brett Brown addressing the press yesterday, and Josh Harrison and the Colangelos not addressing the press yesterday in a moment when they should have done. You know, the way they shirked their responsibilities the way that Hinkie has for 3 years. But the guys, and yes, Brett Brown should feel abandoned. He should feel betrayed because he was brought into this mess. You remember, Brett Brown didn't accept the first offer.
Right.
They had to come to him with another year to sort of create this unprecedented calamity and get it right. And he's of incredibly high character. They hired the right guy. I don't think he loses his job right away. Had Brian Colangelo come along in December, even with a contract extension, the contract extension, according to Keith Pompey and the Enquirer today, the contract extension predated Colangelo. Colangelo agreed that they should go forward with the contract extension But Harris and Brown had agreed to extend the contract before Colangelo came onto the scene. Colangelo endorsed it. So there is a possibility that Colangelo just says, hey, you know what, we're going to eat that money and we're going to go get whoever, the next hot college guy, or we're going to we're going to resurrect Derek Fisher or whoever. But the interesting thing about this, the fallout of this, is if you look at the roster and you look at the coach, you look at Brett Brown, who clearly has been betrayed by Sam Hinkie, but you also look at Jahlil Okafor, and you look at Nerlens Noel, and you look at Joel Embiid, and to a lesser degree, Jeremy Grant, who they have great hopes for. And all of a sudden, they have no ally. Brett Brown might want to keep those guys, but Brett Brown's not going to have that kind of voice. Those players and that coach have no advocate for them in the front office with Hinkie gone, because Hinkie brought them all, and he promoted them all, and he developed them all. So, yeah, it's kind of a toxic environment he created by abandoning them.
It's a great point. Again, Rich Quinones right here with Marcus Hayes. Got about 25 seconds. I know I got to let you get out of here. Who's going to be wearing the green jacket come Sunday?
It's got to be Spieth at this point. Jason Day's made a nice comeback so far this morning, but he's a little bit too aggressive for these wins and these greens. I think Jordan Spieth will hang on by his fingernails.
Marcus, appreciate it, pal. Good catching up. Hopefully we'll get you back on. Enjoy it down there.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, you got it, pal. Be well. Marcus Hayes.